Well, here we are. We're just going to have a look at a few bits and pieces to do with album covers. And I've used this fairly striking example, a little bit more on that later, as the cover. But first, a couple of things. Now, you'll find this slides presentation also on the site. And if you click on the title, then you will get this link to Canva, and there are some album cover designs of some reasonably well known, a bit of a explanation of color psychology here. Some of that stuff is fairly debatable, but look a bit further on the site for another video that has a little bit more of an in-depth look at the use of different colors in art and static images. Okay, we've got the Lord album, we've got the Joy Division. Just scrolling down here, Beyonce, which they talk about, has borrowed a little bit from the Metallica Black album, which may or may not be true, but worth having a little bit of a look through and a look at the blurbs for each of these albums, because it can give you a little bit more of a hint about the artist's intentions in making it and putting it together. Some fairly striking images for these things, some fairly well-known images in the case of the Abbey Road Beatles album. A little spiel here about David Bowie and the Patti Smith album. Just going down. Look, there's quite a few different examples of album covers and a little bit of a blurb about each. Okay, worth looking at. Second thing is this link here, and this just links back to the site. I've got videos here on each of these things, color symbolism, some tips about composing your own album cover, a little video here on visual balance, and a video on the rule of thirds, which is a really important compositional sort of element or rule that's used. Okay, scrolling on with this, I've got some images of static images designed by my year 9s, and probably worth looking at because of how limited they are. Okay, we've got a bit of a jumble of lettering here. The image itself is pretty good picture, and the lettering is okay, but having it in a jumble and in these two colors it's a bit random, and it's probably without any sort of real intent other than wanted to make it look cool. Once again, we've got an image here. These guys did a book called The Ring, and it was sort of about a girl whose dog got stolen for a dog fighting ring. And so we've actually got some reasonable elements in here. We've got the dog in the middle with the ring around it. We've got a girl who looks upset. We can tell because she's covering her face. We've got a police car and some guy with a gun here. I'm not sure about the choices about colours here. And then our next slide, he's just taken it and added a bit more colour to it. And then another example here is of a young man. I probably would have advised to maybe use Google Drawings a bit more, but a really surreal example here. Okay, back to this. This interestingly titled album has a very striking cover picture, pretty recognisable bees. Pretty interesting according to its colour palette. Now, I've picked this not just because it's got a striking sort of an image and an interesting name, but if you click on it, we've got quite a spiel here of from the artist and how that artist went about composing this image and some of the little choices that were made there. So worth looking. That's just a zoom in of the little McLaren he's got on the road on that image. Some of the things he hasn't talked about, like the significance of the bee covering Tyler's face, but some real interesting detail there. So yeah, look, have a look at this. It is worth a look to get a bit of an idea of what the artist was thinking. Also, same sort of deal, probably not as in depth. We have a pretty exotic album cover from Nirvana called In Utero. It's probably not their most well-known album cover. Their most well-known album cover's got a baby floating around next to a dollar in a pool. And may have featured that somewhere else. You click on the link. Once again, there'll be a little bit of information about what's gone into this album cover, what this dominant image is composed of, sort of a female anatomy mannequin with a couple of angel wings pasted on. We've got some collage that Kurt Cobain had made in his lounge. Someone had taken a picture of. Some ideas about that as well. So that's also worth having a little bit of a look at. We've got some other album covers of, sadly, probably music you've never heard of and never will. But this one, very simple. Also, if you look closely there, this is the Metallica Black album. Very dark colour palette. The Joshua Tree, U2. We've got the Red Hot Chili Peppers. We've got another AC/DC. Look, I like AC/DC, so I'll whack a couple of them in here. We've got the title that fits with the little devil's tail and the horns on the Angus, the guitarist. In Rainbows, Radiohead. Use of font here. And I stuck this one in because Let It Bleed is probably my favourite Rolling Stones album, and I thought it was a pretty interesting composition. Now, about ideas, you have to include an idea from the text, and I included these things here, not because they were egregiously bad, but because they actually had some ideas about the text here with this image. And you can look at this image, for example, and think, well, the font is ridiculous and the colours don't match. But you know that the text is going to have something to do with a dog in it. Looking at these images here, you might think it's some sort of gangster thing. You would be wrong. The upset girl is actually the protagonist, the main character, and the scene with the gun is actually a very small part, as is the police. But this does contain some fairly simple ideas, and my advice is keep those ideas simple and you'll be a bit more successful. It's a little bit harder to convey real complex ideas, such as we've already talked about with the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime. We've got some pretty complex ideas there about how chaos forces change. Christopher S. Burgess being super literal, not understanding humor, the importance of honesty and deceit, betrayal. Those ideas, a combination of complex ideas like that. If you've got some ambitions to have a go at that, you're welcome to. But my advice would be to keep your ideas simple and your image simple, and you'd be probably a bit more successful